Every single time, and I mean every single time I read the title of this book, all I can think of is he's got the blood of an exile just underneath his skin. Hello and welcome to my channel. Hopefully you liked being serenaded. Props if you get the reference. But today we're going to talk about Blood of an Exile by Brian Naslund, which is the first in the Dragons of Terra trilogy. And I had meant to get to this for a really long time. Ended up putting this in my pile of possibilities, and then did some wheel spin picks on Patreon, and it was picked. So finally reading this. Now the first thing that I want to know is that immediately when this book started sitting out, my wife comments about the guy on the cover. And then later, as it was still sitting out, my mother was in town and happened to see it. Just assumed it was my wife's book, thinking that this is going to be some like smutty romance book. So keep that in mind, Brian Naslund. This is a confusing cover for many, apparently, and does not necessarily denote what this is. Um, because this is really more of like your sort of like just little gritty, but like your action movie. Your sort of turn the brain off action movie. However, it's also paired with a really big focus on natural history and like order of the natural world and stuff like that as well, and some science and stuff there. So it's a really interesting mix of the two because I felt like the natural history parts and the focus there on like how dragons affect the world and just the different food chains and how if you do this you can affect nature in this way. Some of that reminded me a little bit of the Lady Trent books, which I read the first couple and I thought they were okay and I liked those aspects, but then I just found the rest of it less engaging. So this had some of those elements that I liked in that series, but was definitely more engaging. So I think ultimately worked a little bit better for me. There are still some things that I found a little bit clunky with this one as well, which we will talk about. So the base one, we should talk about what this is actually about. The main character is the flawless Bershad, who is a dragon slayer, and basically in this world, you're sort of banished and made to become a dragon slayer, and it's presumed that you're going to die and not last very long, and this so it's basically like a banishment and death sentence and exile. But he is seemingly impossible to kill, or so the legends say anyway, and so is managed to stick around for a really long time, but he is called back to like the capital city of where he comes from and asked to go on a very dangerous mission by the king who betrayed him and the princess who is his ex-lover, and so that's going on. There's also some like political maneuverings going on. We follow as well Ashlyn, who's the princess, and she's the one who has the biggest interest in like natural sciences and stuff like that, as well as learning about magic. And then we also follow an assassin type character a little bit. It seems more so there just to kind of show us what's going on, but I think maybe in book two we'll see a bit more. So the big thing is, I feel like early on, the focus of just through conversations, through stuff coming up where we're talking about like all of these different things with like there'll be conversations happening like, well, they hunted the dragons here, and then since there were no predators for this happened, and like these long explanations. Those parts again I did find really interesting, but I felt like sometimes they did feel pretty shoehorned in, and it was the author just kind of trying to throw that stuff in, and that continued on a little bit. I feel like throughout there were bits of things and events where it just felt like the author knew what they wanted to do or what they wanted to get across and go, but didn't really know the best way to do it, because there were some other events later on that just really I kind of struggled, because I'm like, well, of course this happened. Like, you didn't think this was going to happen. It was really, really evident that this was going to happen, and it's just nobody realizes because then something could have been done. So there are some things like that were just situations that felt really contrived, where I don't feel like it made a whole lot of sense. Going both ways, where like things happening to our main characters or our characters doing things where it's just like people just happen to be in the same place, or things just happen to be available for them to do what they need to do, or they just nobody happens to figure out what the villain's going to do, the very obvious thing the villain's going to do, that type of thing. And that's where this reminds me of sort of the for lack of a better term, just sort of the fun, dumb, turn your brain off popcorn action movie, because there's a lot of action here, and it's very engaging and it's very entertaining. You just can't think about some of the things too much, similar to many of those types of movies, because that's not really the point. And this especially because it is quick, easy reading and full of action. If this was like, twice the length, then maybe I would have gotten more tired of it. But I found myself still having a really good time with this. I just think there were definitely some of these things too, likely are just a newer author trying to kind of figure out how to do things still. So maybe it'll improve in the next two books. I'll have to find out because I am planning to continue. I'm curious to see where this goes. I had a fun time with it. But those are some of my complaints. And to do some brief spoilers, just to mention some of like the big things that stand out here is things, and spoiler tag here. I'll have another one where you can skip past here to get to the end. But some of the magic stuff seems magic, and like the science stuff seems very shoehorned in because people will just suddenly have a conversation about the gods moss, and we have that with the alchemist character with the assassin too, where he's just like, oh, you need some moss, and then explains all the different kinds of moss, and then that ends up being really important later on. Some of those things felt really shoehorned, and then a lot of the stuff with the super like healing powers of the moss being really extreme, especially later on when they go into the like the other empire and are trying to get the princess back, which also 100% saw that coming. It seems like that character is going to be turned into like a bigger character in the next one, but I found that not at all surprising that that character was there willingly and just kind of ran off. It just seemed like that was where it was going to go to begin with anyway. So, but that's not what the rapid healing, with doing it being done for torture, but then like him like jumping off a wall and then like running as his legs are healing. It just was it was cheesy. It was fun. It was actiony, but it was very cheesy. I thought for sure. The biggest thing for me was with Ashlyn just not seeing coming at all. The very obvious villain bringing his troops in, and they're all in like the heavy cloaks, and like nobody's like, oh, maybe they're hiding something. Like that was just a little too far for me, because if it would have been like, oh, we directly assume something's going to be happening here, would have been one thing, but it was just nobody figured it out at all or even thought of it, even though it was so painfully obvious. Even before like they showed up, it was really obvious where it was going. So again, just some of the things were a little bit on the nose, a little bit really just blunt and out there, and other situations felt really contrived, or just not even, and some things were just cheesy and weren't contrived, but things where it's just like we need this to happen, so it's going to happen this way. Like, oh, we need our characters, they need to weigh in, so there just happens to be a guy who's done it before, and that guy happens to know about a super wide like a sewer line basically, and things like that too. There was just a lot of that, and again, in your popcorn action flick, these types of things don't typically matter all that much. It's just more to be fun and entertaining and have explosions, and there are some explosions in here too, so you still get that. But ultimately, it's just with books, I feel like I am a lot less forgiving than I am with a movie like that. It's because you have more ability to set things up better, I think, in a book. So those were kind of the things that were a little bit down for me. Overall, though, this book, like I said, I think it was really entertaining and engaging. I can see why this isn't like the biggest popular thing, because I think there are some very definite flaws with the book and with some of the way things are set up, and so it's not the smoothest of rides, but it really depends on what you're looking for. This isn't going to be a book that you're just going to be like absorbed into like how detailed and well written it is, but this is the type of book that if you're looking for a fun popcorn read or just want like a change of pace, I think this would work really well. I do a lot of the like really complex, dense type of books, and I love a lot of those, and a lot of my favorites are longer, slower, things like this. So just getting a fun, fast-paced action type of book is really nice every now and then. And again, very, very entertaining. And ultimately, if you're somebody who's just looking for an entertaining read, I think this is a really good fit for that as well. So those are my thoughts overall on Blood of an Exile by Brian Naslund. I will definitely have to update once I finish the trilogy and get from there. But let me know your thoughts on this one. If you've read it or are planning to read it, would definitely be curious to hear from you. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the links in the description as always for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.